highlights ng ating street.
Here we are, guys. Nazareth Village. Ayan. Miley. Miley.
Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Oh, no, no.
Alright, let's start moving down this way.
Ani? 14. Para magkasama tayo.
4, 6, 30, 2, 42. Thank you. 44. Alright, so there are two major events in the Bible in the New Testament that take place in Nazareth. The first one, in the first picture on that wall there next to the door, depicts the Annunciation, which is when the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary and told her that she would give birth to the Son of God. The second one is depicted in the second picture there, which is when Jesus went into the synagogue on the Sabbath in Nazareth, and that's in Luke chapter 4, and we'll be talking about that one later. So as I was saying, this is the place that we've built up. This is what the land used to look like. So this is the stretch of land here. This is the church, this is the YMCA building that we're in right now, and this is the land that makes up Nazareth Village. And so you can see here that we had a lot of people staking the ground, doing very archaeological things, dating things, whatever. And we want to show you what life might have looked like, or pieces of life, in a first century village about the size of Nazareth. Now, if we come over this way, I know it's a really tight squeeze and we're a large group, so I apologize. You can see that one of the other things we found, and we've got a picture here, is we found a wine press from the first century. We know it was from the first century because clay pot shards in the layers of dirt in the wine press dated back to the first century, as did shards in the terraces. These are the types of sandals that they would have worn to press the grapes, or they would have taken off, to press the grapes, because they pressed the grapes in their bare feet. And I'm going to give you some time to think about why they might have done that. Here we have an indoor reconstruction of what a terrace would have looked like. So this is actually a very ingenious system, firstly because on a hillside you can't plant, you have to have flat ground to plant. So you cut giant steps out of the hillside, and then at the bottom of each step, you put this white layer. This is chalk, and what this does is it forms a sealant layer, so that when you've got the dirt here above the chalk, and the dirt is saturated with rain, instead of the water just going down into the earth, the chalk makes it flow out through the rocks to the next terrace below, and so it's actually a self-irrigation system. So the people in the first century were very smart. Yeah. Now this door, this is an interesting door. It's actually two doors in one. So this big door would have been open in times of peace. It's big enough to accommodate a fully loaded camel. Now this door is not from the first century, it's more from the Ottoman period, so from the last 150, 200 years or so. But they may have had similar doors in the first century. And so this would be open during times of peace to allow caravans and camels and friends and visitors to openly enter your courtyard of your home. However, in times of war or when peace was less certain, this would be barred from the backside and you would open only the smaller door. Now, as you can see, not only would a person have to duck down to go in this door, they would also have to step up and over. So you'd enter like this, and especially if you were an unwanted soldier, it would make the back of your neck a very good target for someone to hit with a frying pan, stick, or other object in order to keep the raiding parties out of their homes. So now let's step farther back in time. Last one in, please close the door. So Nazareth, modern Nazareth, is a decently sized city of about 80,000 people, and with the other small towns and villages surrounding it, it serves approximately 150 to 200,000 people with the services, stores, etc. that it provides. But the Nazareth of Jesus' day was actually a very small village made up of maybe 50 families, so it would have been 200 to 300 people at maximum size. If you look here, you can see a silhouette of the mountains that surround the town. And so one of the reasons that Nazareth would have likely remained as a small village for so long is because as small as it was enclosed by mountains, you couldn't actually see it from the main roads. That being said, the mountains also provided a special challenge in building a town because just as hard as it is to plant a garden on a hillside, it's equally difficult to put in a proper foundation for a house or a street or anything like that. Okay, so 2,000 years ago, when Jesus was born, the world that he was born into here in the Holy Land, in Israel, was one of oppression and bloodshed and war, because at that point the Romans were in charge. This would have been a very common sight to everyone. They all would have known and feared and hated these people. And so this is one of the reasons, because it was well known, that Paul chose this to write about when he was talking about the armor of God in Ephesians chapter 6. You've got the helmet of salvation. You've got the breastplate of righteousness. Yeah. You've got the belt of truth. Yeah. Okay. So these are things that people would have been familiar with. They all knew what a Roman soldier looked like. You've also got the shield there of faith. And then here is the type of sword that Paul was talking about when he talked about the sword of the Spirit. So this is a short sword. It's called a gladius. You may find it, the word gladius sounds familiar. It's the same root word as the word gladiator. So this was a short sword. It was meant to be wielded with one hand, and it was meant for fighting at close quarters. You'll also notice it's sharp on both edges. So the double-edged sword that he talks about later on in the book of Hebrews that pierces through the bones and marrow. And he talks about the Word of God also being this double-edged sword. Now, this being Roman times, there was plenty of rebellion and plenty of revolting. First and most primary way of execution in this land would have been the religious form of execution. And so what they would do is they would take someone to the top of a cliff or a drop that was about the height of 2 men. They would tie their hands behind their back, push them off, and then as they were still alive, they would throw stones at them until they were dead. And this was the religious method of execution. So this was used for people who were blasphemers, people who had broken the Torah, people who had broken the 10 Commandments. Nothing to do with Roman law, this is all religious law. The other method of execution that was common was crucifixion. This is the Roman method of execution, because if you hang like this, you're cutting off your oxygen supply. So you would have to pull yourself up in order to fill your lungs with air, and then you'd be so exhausted that you'd sink back down. And you would keep doing this until you died of suffocation, and it could take up to 2 days for this to happen. So this is the method with which Jesus was executed by the Romans.
Ginagamit nila before. Ay, maingat ka. Guess we're now here in the actual. Here's my honey pot. Ang aking honey pot. Ayan.
Uy, tayo! May!
Oh, wait.
Nasa ano kami? Nazareth Village.
Really?
Yes. Come on, mas maraming gwapo doon.
Yeah.
Kami, nasok na kami.
Borlog.
So I would like to introduce you to my friend Abraham.
Hi.
And his flock of sheep. Sarah, we just passed on the path going back to the kitchen with the water jar. Yeah.
Right here in Nazareth Village.
So the relationship between the shepherd and the sheep is something that comes up a lot in the Bible. It actually starts back in Genesis when Abel, the son of Adam and Eve, was a shepherd and brought a lamb as a sacrifice, as an acceptable sacrifice to God. You've got people like a lot of Abraham's family who were shepherds. His grandson Jacob actually worked as a shepherd for his uncle Laban for quite some years. You've got King David, who said in Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd." And all the way into the book of John in the New Testament, where Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd." Now, there's a lot of things Jesus said about who he was as the good shepherd. He said things like, "I know my sheep." He said things like, "My sheep hear my voice and they follow me."
Amen.
He said things like, "I am the door to the sheepfold. I lay down my life for my sheep."
Amen.
And that one actually has a very concrete meaning to it. Because as Abraham can tell you, right now things are starting to look green, but there's still not a lot of green close to town. So there's a lot of days he's got to go farther than a day's walk in order to find enough food for his sheep. If he can't make it back to town before dark, he's not going to walk in the dark with his sheep because they can't see where they're going. So he's going to make an enclosure for them. He's going to find a cave if he can, or he's going to take a lot of branches and pile them up to make an enclosure for his sheep. He's going to leave just a big enough opening for the sheep to get in, and then when all of his 100 sheep, because he's gone after the 1, left the 99 and come back with the 1, once all of them are back, he's going to lay down and he's going to sleep across the door to the sheepfold he's created. So if anyone tries to get in overnight, it's his life that's on the line. So he will sacrifice himself for the good of his sheep. He's a very good shepherd. But you'll notice that this shepherd only has sheep. Some shepherds have goats, but we've only got sheep in our pen. We used to have goats, but they jumped out and they ate the cabbages and they ate the lettuce and they ate the weed and they ate all the things they weren't supposed to eat. There's a couple of big differences between sheep and goats. The first major one that most people think of is the fact that sheep have wool. So they get sheared once a year, and we'll talk at the weaver's house later about what we do with that wool. But the second big difference is their attitude. Sheep know the shepherd's voice, and when the shepherd says come, they will follow the shepherd. Goats know the shepherd's voice, and when the shepherd says come, they'll go do whatever they want. And Jesus talks about this too, when in Matthew, when he says, when the Son of Man comes in the last days, with all his angels with him, he will separate the people before him, with the sheep to his right and the goats to his left, just as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And the difference between the sheep and goats was attitude and actions. It was, did you feed him or not? Did you clothe him or not? Did you give him water or not? So, are we all sheep?
We are.
Good. All right, sheep, let's follow your shepherd.
Okay.
Thank you, Abraham. Father Abraham have 7 children.
7 children have Father Abraham. Father Abraham has 7 children. 7 children has Father Abraham.
Talks about when in the Old Testament, when say King David died and he was gathered to his fathers. This is what it was talking about when they gathered the bones and rested them with the bones of the fathers. Now we know that Jesus was buried in a tomb like this because Joseph of Arimathea was on the Sanhedrin and he would have been a very wealthy man. And we can imagine that the conversation when Joseph got home that night, well, I don't think his wife would have been pleased because it was Shabbat and he was late. So he comes in the door and she starts saying, Joseph, you're late. It's Shabbat. You were supposed to be here hours ago to help you with the preparation. You didn't even tell me you were coming late. Where have you been? And he says, oh honey, they crucified Jesus today. And she says, that should have been over before this. Like, you could have been home an hour ago. What have you been doing? And he says, well, I asked Pilate for the body and I put him in our family tomb. And she says, Joseph, what were you thinking? We just finished that tomb. Like, what are we supposed to do for our family now? I can't believe you'd do that without telling me or asking me. And he says, no, honey, don't worry, it's only for the weekend. Jesus rises again after the weekend. Here. Anyway, if ever anyone wants to go in and take some pictures, you can. Last one in, do not close the door.
Dito lang ba? Yes, pasok tayo. Pasok ko na.
Ano na meron? Empty space. Ay, liliit.
May hotdog na siguro dito.
May hotdog din na gusto niya. Anong ano dito?
Alam mo, ang ganda dyan, madilim.
Hala. Here the
Open the grave. But the flesh on your foot isn't hard enough to crush the seed open. And this is actually land that they bought when they bought the land for the original hospital building, thinking that they might need it to expand one day. However, that expansion never happened, and so they had it sitting vacant. Alright, let's keep coming, please. We do need to keep moving. As you may have guessed, this is our olive press, and this is Gabriel, and this is his donkey Mosey. And this is where we bring the olives as quickly as we can after they've been picked off the trees, because it's best if they're crushed within a couple of hours of being picked. So what happens is the olives go into here, and then the donkey moves around and it crushes this stone crushes the olives. This, by the way, is the size of millstone that Jesus was talking about when he said that if anyone causes one of these little ones to stumble, it's better they have a millstone tied around their neck and be dropped in the sea. He wasn't talking about the little kitchen millstones. He was talking about the big olive one. All right, so the olives go in. Yeah, you're gonna need to stand back, please. And then the donkey goes around. You can also use a couple of strong teenagers if you don't have a donkey. And this crushes the olives. And unlike the grapes, the olive pits do not affect the flavor of the oil. So we crush the pits and everything with these. Once you've got your olive mash, you take a basket like this, and you stuff the mash all around the edges till it looks like a big greasy donut. But you don't take a bite because it don't taste good. Then you bring your baskets over here, and if I can get through quickly. So you bring them over here, the olive press. If everyone, so what you'll see if you look at the presses, there's a big beam of wood. There's some stone weights underneath the one end of it. And then at the end closest to this wall here is a disc, and underneath that disc is a hole in the floor. Underneath that hole in the floor is a vat, a clean cistern. And so what you do is you've got your baskets full of olive mash, and you put them over that hole, and you let the beam down, and the weight of the disc coupled with the weights of the stones in the beam will press the olives, and oil and water will come out. Now the Lord was very smart, and he designed it so the oil floats to the top. So all you need to do is reach in and skim out the oil till you're taking water out, and you've got your olive oil. Each set of baskets is pressed 3 times. The first press is your best quality oil, and that would be your first fruits. It would be sent to the temple in Jerusalem. Some of it might be used for lighting the menorahs, but more likely it would be used in the offerings, the peace offerings, the friendship offerings that require oil to go with them. Your second press is still very good, but it's not as high quality, and there's more of it because you've added more weight. This would be used for cooking, for cosmetics, for medication, ointments, makeup, that kind of thing. And your third press will have the highest quantity but the lowest quality. So you're going to use that to make olive oil soap and to light the little lamps that you have in your house. Now, the word in Hebrew for olive press is gat shmonim. The name for the garden where Jesus prayed in on the last night of his life was Gethsemane. It has the same, remember I told you the olive tree about the roots? Gethshmonim and Gethsemane had the same roots. It was on the Mount of Olives, and there was likely an olive press there. And just as each stack of olives is pressed 3 times, Jesus was pressed 3 times in prayer. So he had
Yun, may toilet si Bonavin. Dito ko na sila, nag-chat naman siya.
Ay, sabi niya, magkita na lang daw din. Come here. Dito tayo. Yeah, keep coming up, please.
Halina kayo, bilisan niyo na.
Alright, I need to get into this here. Alright, if people want to continue moving around so we got room for the people still coming up the stairs to actually come in. How many people have we got left down there still?
At least 4.
Okay, I'm gonna start. So everybody, please say shalom to our weaver Hannah. Yeah. So what you see here is not simply just a woman spinning and weaving, but this is actually an entire factory that takes the fleece off the sheep from sheep to shawl. So you start in May or June when it's really, really hot. You start by shearing all the sheep with these big scissors. If anyone wants a haircut, they're complimentary on Shabbat.
Free today.
Free today. Yeah?
Merry Christmas.
Alright. And now, after wearing that wool for an entire year, it's not the cleanest. So we bring it to running water if we have it, or to a basin like we've got in that far wall, and we wash it with lots of water. And what kind of soap? Yes, olive soap. Once it's clean, we can either card it and make it smooth and use it the color of the sheep, which is the brown, the tan, and the off-white. Or we can add other colors to it using the things around us. For example, if you boil onion skins in water, cool it, add salt and vinegar, and add wool, you'll get this yellowish brown color. You can repeat the same process with grasses, tree leaves, rosemary, and anything that's a very deep, bright green color and get greens. You can also do the same thing with the skins and seeds of various types of pomegranates for the orange, yellow, red spectrum. And those are all very easily affordable because they're made with materials anyone would have. This one gets a little more expensive. The spice used to dye this color starts with S and ends with afron. It's saffron. Yeah. Your nutshells give you this beautiful pearly grayish candy kind of color. And then these are your most expensive ones. It's your blue, your purple, your crimson, your scarlet. And as you will all have guessed, it's made from sea snails. Not the shell, the animal inside it. The sea snail has an ink inside of it, similar to an octopus or a squid. So each snail will give you about 1 drop of ink, so it takes 4,000 to 6,000 of them to dye 1 kilogram of wool. And someone had to dive into the sea, bring the snail up, extract the dye the wool. It was a very complex process, and so it cost a lot of money. So this color scheme became known as the color for royalty, for the kings, the emperors, and the priests. And this is the color Jesus was talking about when he said, though your sins are scarlet, a permanent color, I will make them white as snow. Once you've got the color you want, you're ready to make it into yarn. So she's going to take the piece that she was working on and a new piece and join the ends together, hook it to her spindle, and spin with the spindle and press with her fingers. And as you can see, you can't see where she joined the two. In Proverbs 31, it says that the wise and respectable woman takes her spindle in her hand. So she would have been spinning her own yarn and thread in order to clothe her family with. So now you take it and you put it on the loom, right? Right away, Hannah?
Yes.
You take it and you put it straight from there to the loom? No. because you've been spinning all one way, you've built up a lot of tension in that wool. So it has to rest either on the spindle or in a ball of yarn like this for 3 to 5 weeks until it is straight, and then it can be put onto the loom. So you've got front and back threads here, held down by weights at the bottom. And what she's gonna do, she'll do it so both sides can see, yeah? Yeah, so she's gonna take the back strings and raise them above the front strings to create a channel or an opening for her shuttle to go through. And then she's gonna pass the shuttle through the opening she's made. Like so. Then she's gonna turn around and do it again so everyone on this side can see. She's gonna take the back strings and bring them up in front of the front strings, above the front strings, to create a channel for the shuttle to go through. And then she's going to take this comb and she's going to push that row up against the row before it to create a nice tight even weave. And at the end of a day or two, she'll have a shawl like this. So this was made with wool from our sheep, naturally dyed. This is organic, gluten-free, GMO-free, dairy-free, 100% handmade. Wow. And yes, if we have completed ones, we do sell them in our gift shop. Now, because the yarn takes so long to make, you don't want to waste any of it. So with the bits you've got left over after you've cut the shawl off, you make first century Barbie dolls for your children to play with. Okay, thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. God bless you. And I want to thank all of you for visiting me. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Hannah.
And God bless you. Bye-bye. Love you.
Bye. Love you. God bless.
From our sheep.
Oh,
Yeah.
from our sheep.
Yeah. All right. So now we're gonna go to the synagogue.
God bless. Bye.
All right. So follow me.
Where's si Bona? Bona kid.
So welcome to the synagogue. The word synagogue actually comes from the Greek synagoge, which means a gathering place or a place where people gather. And the word in Hebrew, Beit Knesset, also means a place of gathering.
Would you consider becoming a partner to the Nazareth Village? and secure the future of this ministry by helping in a very real way and leave a lasting legacy. Church, leave a legacy in the Holy Land, in the hometown of Jesus, and help us secure the ministry of the village for generations to come, or until the Lord Himself returns. And we remember, every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God.
Also, each going to be getting a small gift, assuming we have enough, of an oil lamp, which was chosen as the symbol of the village, because Jesus said, I am the light of the world, and whoever follows me will never walk in darkness. And so we hope that every time you see this lamp, that you will think of Nazareth Village and the light that we are shining to not only the Christians in this area, but also the Jewish and the Muslim people who live here.
Oh no, may ano tayo Yeah, I like this one also. Yeah. It's the best souvenir ever. I like this one. Ano yung nalagyan niya? Ang mahal pero ang ganda. Pag nalagyan ng rosary.
Like a